What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Best Show Ever podcast, the podcast where I interview people about the best shows they've ever seen in their lives. I'm your host, Cam Hurt, and we got a very cool week going on right now. Okay? Got a very cool week with two very cool guests. And if you haven't listened to the other episode yet, it's with musician, singer, songwriter Maggie Rose, who's just having a huge year and has awesome music that you should go check out. She tells us some great stories about seeing Fish and seeing Paul McCartney and such. But this is also a great episode this week with the one and only Alex Mazer from New Springfield Boogie. Now, if you're someone who goes to the lot, okay, if you're someone who has been at the Sphere at all this summer and went to the lot even one time, New Springfield Boogie is a fixture of that scene. And someone who, you know what, has become a buddy of mine over the last year. And so it was awesome to get to talk to Alex. I would love to summarize the intro that he sent over, but I got to be honest, I got to read it verbatim, okay? Music managers, people who are sending over introductions of yourself, take some notes here. This is how you introduce yourself on a podcast, okay? And I will read it as such. Here we go. Known as That Simpsons Guy from Lot, or simply But Our Cup, deviant digital mashup artist Alex Mazer has managed to find a way to make his art even more niche and even more alienating by fusing together the timeless comedic sensibility of The Simpsons with the legendary iconography of the Grateful Dead. Branding himself under the pithy moniker New Springfield Boogie, the Wiley Scamp has dedicated himself to what he refers to as a medley of American counterculture. Design, jokes, multimedia video production, and artistry of the meme. This guy is pouring the Kool-Aid, and you should be drinking it. Now, you know, I get intros from managers and artists every once in a while, and they'll say, you can mention this, you can mention that. That is how you introduce yourself. And so anything more that I could possibly add to that would be, it would be doing it a disservice. And it would be doing what Alex does a disservice. So a couple things, go follow New Springfield Boogie right now so you can get a little bit of this information, so you can get a little bit of the artful memes and the clash of counterculture that he creates with New Springfield Boogie. At the same time, folks, if you would like to support this show, please go ahead and, subscribe to the YouTube, rate it on Spotify, rate it on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. That stuff really helps out. If you're someone who is interested in donating to the show, the best way to do that is joining the Patreon. It's $4 a month, and you get episodes a day early before everybody else. You get bonus episodes like the one that I have out right now with Connor the Niche Mar, also another incredible internet memesman. We talk a little bit about Fish. We talk about those Mansfield shows that were fantastic. But that's just about enough intro out of me. Please enjoy this conversation that I had with Alex, New Springfield Boogie. But first, here's a little bit of music from Cal Kehoe. This is an unreleased song of his called Down. Enjoy. She was great, and she reached out to ask about you. Mm-hmm. She's like, you should interview Alex after I had already asked you.
Okay, cool.
To do the show. Yeah, she was nice. Like, who's a really good interview.
Well, that's nice of her to say. I don't remember her ever interviewing me, so I don't know how she would know that, but maybe it's just a women's intuition.
She just knows.
Yeah.
She just knows. Yeah, that was truly alarming when I found out that you two were roommates in college.
Yeah, it was post-college. So we went to the same college, and then a bunch of us moved into like a row house in Columbia Heights in DC right after college and lived together for like 2 or 3 years. So it was wild. It was really fun. And I'm still in contact with all of them.
She credited you as the beginning of her creating Fish comedy within the scene. So were you already...
I'll take that credit.
Yeah.
So she is brilliant. She's like very naturally funny person. And also like funny things happen to her. You know, she's like a
Yeah.
kind of a magnet for like funny situations. And she's super creative. She's a great writer. And there were many times when we were living together where like we'd all be going out and she's like, no, I'm going to stay home and write a story. And I just like, fuck, I love and respect that so much. And I'd always be like, hey, can we read them? And it was always kind of like, no, it's not done yet, sort of a thing. And she likes making funny videos. And I was just kind of like, Allison, like, you are a creative person. Like, share your gift, you know? Like, I don't I don't know how else to say it to you, but like there's an audience out there for it. So like do it. You know, you'll know pretty quickly if it's gonna work or not. And she did. It took a little bit more push. There were like a few more conversations than that. And she's like, should I just post it to my like my normal Instagram? I'm like, no, make an account, like go for it. So I'm happy she did.
But that's like that is so many of us like a little paralyzed to release the thing, especially if you're
Totally.
someone who wants it to be done well. Like she wants to be it's not whatever, you know.
No, no,
Like
I get that. There comes, and you know, when I was first posting stuff, I was like, it's not good enough to share. And there comes a point where it's like, well, it doesn't matter because I'm just gonna keep doing this. And you know what? Sometimes something lands and sometimes it doesn't. And
yeah.
sometimes I have no idea what it's gonna be that hits because sometimes I'll like yesterday I posted the like Pearl Jam Mrs. Doubtfire mashup. I'm like, this is the funniest thing I've ever made in my life. And it's got like, you know, like 100 likes. So and also, but like it's still 100 people that thought it was funny. But I thought it was gonna fucking kill. But you know,
Yeah.
also know your audience.
You just like don't get to decide. You just simply don't. And so like I don't know. There's always like what's the best way to post this or should I post this at a certain time or I'm like
Right.
and you should like do things as well as you can, but there's also like you said, I'm going to keep doing this anyway. So like it's just a step to the next one.
It's
Like I just
trial and
have to
error. You know, like you learn from experience. You're like, okay, this didn't work this time. I think this is funny. So why didn't this work? Was it the time of day that I did it? Was it the caption? Was it the way in which I presented it? Should it have been static or should it have been a reel? Like I know there's something good there. And then you learn from those experiences and hopefully you hone in on like what is successful.
Yeah, I mean, like, and your output online is also pretty like you put stuff out every single week, seemingly. Do you feel like when I think of The Simpsons, I think of like the most jokes ever.
Hmm.
Like whether it's one episode or the show entirely, or like the you know the big poster of characters or whatever, it's just like the volume of jokes. Is that um like, clearly you're inspired by The Simpsons. Do you think The Simpsons inspired your current art? But like,
I
clearly you're
never
inspired by
considered that.
but you're someone who, like, bakes a lot of jokes into a post. Like, you'll do, like, a slide of, like, a bunch of different jokes, to have, like, a full like, get a bunch of different jokes within the same inspired idea out. Is that something that, like, um
That's certainly inspired by them. I mean, I
yeah.
can't speak to now, but like the era that like I hold close to my heart is obviously like the first 10 seasons or whatever. And there was a time when like it wasn't just like so okay, on a normal sitcom, it's like you tell a joke, then you pause, you wait for the laughter, and then you go on the conversation. On The Simpsons, like they don't wait for you to laugh. It's just rapid fire joke. It's like gag that leads into a gag that leads into another gag, and there might be like a sight gag in the background that doesn't have to do with anything. And like if you catch it, you catch it. And I love that. You know, it's a comedian's type of comedy, I think. Like when you can it's like when you're like riffing with your friends, like it's great when you tell a joke and everyone just laughs, but isn't it also really fun when someone tells a joke right back at you, you know, like riffing off of your joke? That that's
Yeah,
the
and
that's the type of comedy that I treasure.
yeah, and, like, following something to its conclusion,
Hmm.
like, you
And
know
then a callback later.
yeah, and a callback later, and a callback, like, 3 episodes later, or,
Yeah.
like, a full, like, joke that never goes away,
Hmm.
like, and you're certainly someone who commits, uh,
Commit to the bit.
you're certainly someone who commits. Um, di was there, like, a level of I know that this we'll get into your best shows, I do wanna talk to you about the stuff that you create because I love the stuff that you make. Was there ever a level of, like, when you started making, your Simpsons crossover stuff or like even just any of the comedy that you make where you're like, "Is this like what I should be making? Is this like?" Because
So
it's niche.
that's a
Like
great
it's
question. So I firmly believe that you should be making your art for yourself because that's when you're going to do the best stuff. And I'm sure that you've heard people say that before, and it's like, okay, well, like, what about appealing to the masses? And there's something to that, but like, if you take a chance in your art, it's more authentic and it's more meaningful to you, and like, you're gonna like it the best. And an example of that that I can think of is I was doing just oh, I haven't like introduced myself or like talked about who I am. Should I do that or
Oh,
like
so and this is something that I do that does confuse people. I there's an intro that I'm gonna put on the beginning of
okay,
this interview. This interview
okay,
is probably gonna come out later. I'll do
okay.
that a little more current, so we have like a current intro, and it's gonna be wonderful. It's
Oh,
gonna
great.
we are gonna talk
I
about
trust your
you,
artistic vision.
and the outro. Oh man, it's gonna complement this conversation.
Amazing. Okay, so
Yeah,
then I will continue with that thought.
yeah,
So I don't remember exactly when it was. I'm sure I can just go look at Instagram and get the date. Instagram is like how I keep track of my life because I don't remember when anything happened to me ever.
yeah.
I know I've done a lot of things in my life, but I don't know like when what was what year. Like I have calendar blindness. My wife calls me calendar lad. Um, so it was certainly in a summer. We were taking a trip to Dollywood. I was working as a runner on Biscuits tour, and I was a driver going from Indiana to St. Louis to Pelham because they had shows at the Caverns, and I told her to meet me at the Cavern shows, and then we would go to Dollywood afterwards because I love Dolly Parton. I'm like a lifelong Dolly Parton fan, and I've always wanted to go to Dollywood. And as I was sitting on my couch, I just like had this funny thought, like, Dollywood's an amusement park, kind of like Jurassic Park. Like, I don't know why I thought of that. And then I was like, oh, I should like make a funny Jurassic Park Dolly Parton mashup. And then I was like, well, that has nothing to do with what I normally do. I could certainly throw some Grateful Dead in there. And then I thought about the dinosaur from the cover of Jerry Garcia's Run for the Roses.
Mhm.
And then I thought, I should go make that right now because if I don't do it right now, I'm never going to do it. And I got off the couch and went to the computer, which was mere feet away. And I made that in just a few minutes. And I was like, this is really funny, but I don't think I'm allowed to post this on New Springfield Boogie because that's a Simpsons Grateful Dead mashup account. It's against the rules. I was like, wait, I make the rules. What am I
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah.
So I like wrestled back and forth with it. I'm kind of like, what if people don't think this is funny? What if people are confused? Like, I've never once before broken my own, rule set that I made for myself. And I just in like the morning I went to Dollywood, I posted it. And honestly, like that morning, it was the most t-shirts I had ever sold in a single morning. And then Jay Lane wore that. I got a lot of mileage out of that design. I sold a lot of those stickers, probably more of that t-shirt than any of my other designs. And when Jay Lane wore that on stage, like my online sales went bananas.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like how you're like, "Oh, I the rules dictate that I shouldn't post this, and it
Right,
probably won't do well because of the rules."
right. But I was just like, I made that for me. I made that because I wanted to wear that shirt myself to Dollywood. And me and Lizzie and my friend Liz went to Dollywood, wore that shirt. We also wore Dolly wigs that day. And when we got to the park, they stopped us. Like security stopped us at the gate and they're like, we can't let you in. And we're like, why? I'm like, oh God, is it like the bootleg merch? And the guy's like, as of this morning, nobody can come in dressed like Dolly Parton or Santa Claus. And I was like, as of this morning, wait, did you say Santa Claus? And
He's like,
apparently
"Not again."
they were filming her Christmas special there that day, which it still doesn't exactly make sense. I'm like, so you're gonna see me and think I'm her and shoot me instead of her? Like, it didn't make sense. But
"Quick,
I
Dolly, to the set."
who am I to argue with the security at Dollywood? So we're like, okay, we'll take them off and come in. They're like, no, you don't understand. We're not going to let you in with the wigs. So I was like, do you have a trash bag? And so they gave me a trash bag. We put the wigs in a trash bag, hid it in a bush, and went in hoping they would still be there at the end of the day. They were.
And they yeah, and thank God, and thank God. That is such a funny lockout. Like,
Yeah.
you guys all standing in the wigs like, "What? Excuse me?"
It was so odd, but it was the type of odd that was consistent with the rest of that entire trip. So it was,
Yeah.
and now it's a funny story.
It is a funny story. That I mean, the guy having to figure out what to do with the wigs is really, really funny.
Yeah.
Like, oh man. And you know what? Like, it's just how many ideas get like just tossed away because it's like, I'm not gonna make the Dolly Parton Jurassic Park thing. Like that's a little stupid. Like you just said yes to it, and then it became this huge deal. And so yeah, I just I know that like with making niche things, there's always a little of like, is anyone gonna get this? Is this even for anyone? But then like the thing that's for no one seems to be for the most people. Like
Well, I can't say that it's for the most people, but the people, an inside joke, when you are on the inside of an inside joke, not only is it hilarious, it's like fulfilling. It's like
yeah,
you are rewarded for the stupid thing that you know.
yeah, yeah, and it feels like it's just for you.
Right.
Feels like just for you and a couple other people.
And
Man,
I think, and people connect to that sort of humor on an emotional level. And so, and it's what I'm doing, like with the Grateful Dead and the Simpsons. Like I'm like, I feel this way. Like there must be other people out there that feel the same way. And when the people come to like my booth on Shakedown that like really get it, like their heads explode. They're like, why does this exist? This is my exact style, you know?
you're like, this is a whole booth. This is perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's funny. And there's
yeah,
some people that like casually get it, or like they have a friend or a brother or an uncle that would think this is funny. But
yeah,
like there's the people that I like really connect with, like I can like really nerd out with. It's
yeah.
very, very fun.
Well, I love your stuff. And I've been loving getting to meet you in real life and talk
We had a great
talk
hang
about
this weekend.
we had a great hang this weekend. I'm certain that was your best show ever. I'm certain that was the best night of your life. Um, so I can't wait to talk about it. No, I mean, yeah, no, that was such a great night. I mean, just getting to hang out with like you and Sean. Sean, who runs Long Strange Putt, just left my house, and we were going over our peaches and our pits of the weekend before we
Oh,
left,
nice.
like a good improv team should. And he was like truly one of the peaches was getting to talk with Alex at length. He said that you guys were talking about buying a house and making it work in that way. But yeah, like
It was a pretty
uh
adult conversation given the context.
yeah, we were like in such a ridiculous conversation, and you guys are like, and you gotta, do everything you
Like, what's
can
the mortgage rate?
to ooh, buddy. You're like those guys. And it's good you didn't do that during the show. That's for the
No, no,
afters.
no. Yeah, that's for the afters.
Um, and I'm glad I caught you before you're heading back for more Dead and Co. But
And back tomorrow.
I really want to get into your shows here. And so we always start off with the first show you ever saw in your life. What's the first concert you ever saw in your life?
So my parents took me to like a lot of just go see like the symphony and orchestral things and musicals that, I they weren't necessarily consensual because I was a child. But I feel like
Okay.
the first show I ever actually went to of my own volition, I was probably like 12 or 13. I went to go see a ska band called the Skanker. They were,
What a name. What
yeah,
a name.
they actually ended up changing it because I think there was another Skanker band.
Right.
So
Of
they
course.
changed it to the Ratchet Boys, which is also a great name. A couple of years
Yeah.
later, shout out to DC Ska. I grew up in the Washington D.C. area, and there was a vibrant local ska and punk scene that was very, very welcoming to people of my age. And so they were playing at this. It wasn't even a venue. It was like a kids' peewee soccer place called Corner Kick. I don't know if it was a chain, but it was in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And there was soccer, multiple soccer fields downstairs, and upstairs there was like a bar where parents could sit and drink and smoke inside. And there was a small stage in the room, and on the weekends like local bands would play there, and the DC ska organization had a relationship with the Corner Kick. And I saw the Skanker that would eventually become the Ratchet Boys there, eventually kind of befriended them. And years later in my own ska, I was in a ska band and then a punk band, and I played there and opened for that band.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
What did you play in the ska band?
Trumpet.
I
And I
was just gonna
sang
say,
too.
were you in the horn section?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. What was the name of that band?
So the ska band, the name is controversial. Like we all kind of like had our own ideas, and it didn't really go very many places. That I think back on it as Amazing Larry, which is
Okay.
which is a Pee Wee Herman reference. It's in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Like after his bike gets stolen, he's conducting a meeting, all his friends downstairs, and he's like really paranoid and like has this like board and a pointer, and he's like explaining how he thinks his bike was stolen to his friends that are not super interested. And there's this bald guy with a comb over mohawk that's rainbow, and he's talking while Pee-wee's talking, and Pee-wee is incensed by this, and he says, "Do you have something you'd like to share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry?" It's the only scene that guy is in for the entire movie, and I thought that was so funny as a kid.
It's a great pull for a band name.
Yeah. And then Amazing Larry didn't, we practiced. Maybe we played a show or two. I don't even think we really ever did anything. But the punk band I was in after that was called the Max Levine Ensemble.
Great.
Not to be confused
Great.
with Max Weinberg, Conan O'Brien's drummer.
Of
And
course.
and they still play occasionally.
Wow.
Yeah. They were prolific in the DC punk scene. I haven't been in that band in a very long time, but it's a 3-piece now, and they play every so often.
Man. And we don't need to talk about how that band.
I'm on the first 3 albums though.
We don't need to talk about how you left that band, especially if it was under just awful circumstances. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was a nasty breakup.
It was just kind of like, no, I still talk to those guys.
Okay, cool.
It was they wanted to keep playing, and I wanted to go to college and start seeing jam bands.
Yeah, and that's a good start. That's a good thing to do. And we'll get into some of those shows. Do you have a worst show that you ever saw?
This is a hard one. I don't think that I have a worst show, but anytime I've ever seen a group of white guys playing reggae, it's the worst show I've ever seen.
Yeah, sure. Is there a band that comes to mind, or like a group of bands
and
that come to
I
mind?
feel sorry saying anything mean about anyone, but like
Sure.
there is a band that's Soldiers of Jah Army, Soja. I think they're a bunch of white guys. I haven't even thought about them in like 20 years, but yeah, I think that was just a bunch of white guys playing reggae, and that just makes my flesh kind of crawl.
We really, really hit an era of that, like right when we were young, like of like, if you were gonna be a chill white guy, if you were gonna you were gonna have to listen to some really white guys doing reggae,
Yeah,
and reggae voice,
and that's maybe even the worst part.
Oh yeah,
Like hearing like a white guy sing in reggae voice is like it's very, very cringy, and kind of like it's kind of like a tone deaf thing to do, in my opinion.
Not in 2004.
No.
Not in 2005. You could
feel
do
like,
you could do Bob Marley call and response bits if you were from Michigan, a white guy from Michigan. You
yeah,
could be like skibbity ba ba yo, and like that was a fine thing to do.
yeah.
It wasn't, but
No,
we let it happen.
you know that now. Yeah, we stood by, so we're complicit.
We are complicit, and I was in those crowds, and I
Yeah,
did the response.
yeah. I did their yeah. I'm
And
ashamed of
I smoked bowls, man.
I smoked chillums and oneies.
Yeah, oneies. I mean, and also like living in Wisconsin, like where
Mhm.
weed is still not cool, but like in that time super not cool. I mean, you get like a slightly stupid, again, like I don't mean to put these, I like slightly stupid, but just you get a band like that in town, like weed is going to get smoked, and that's a huge deal in
I mean,
2007.
it's good for the micro economies.
It's good for the microeconomies, the white guy reggae. Yeah, that's fair. Was there ever like a worse show that was like your fault, where you kind of messed it up a
I'm
little
sure.
bit?
I used to not have a good relationship with alcohol, and I am certain I've ruined shows for my friends in the past.
You had a bad relationship, as in you weren't extra chill when you were drinking.
I wasn't. I'm 5 years without a drink, actually, just a little over
Oh,
5 years. I'm
congrats,
proud
man.
to say thank you. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's never, it's not, it makes it easy for things to not go well, when you're drinking, and so, yeah. That's I just sometimes when I bring up worse shows to people, they're like, "Man, I I don't wanna put down an artist." It's like, "Yeah, sometimes it was your fault," you know?
yeah. No, I've been kicked out of shows before, and like, my friends have had to like babysit me. This hasn't happened in a long time, but anytime that your actions are impacting your friends or family adversely, then it's a problem. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a problem.
Steven Seagal, I think a few years ago had a dance hall release, like where he was like singing in like a Jamaican accent, and that was horrible to listen. There's like a line like "Me wanda bunani" or something like that from Steven
Yeah.
Seagal. Not that like he has any kind of self-awareness at all. And I don't really think much of him anyway, so I think that is sorry, Steven, or any Steven Seagal fans out there, if you're watching. I think that's
You
kind of like in line with his character.
I would totally agree. You don't need to apologize. I think that a guy like Steven Seagal needs a couple people around him saying no.
Yeah. No
To,
one says no to him. They don't want him to beat him up.
right. He'll just karate chop you right in the face. And so that's yeah, you
Undisputed
need
is cool.
you need people around you to say no so you don't do a dance hall record.
Right.
Well, like you said, you were saying before, it's very difficult to pick your best shows.
Hmm.
You've seen so many great shows. I'm sure even just in like a category of one like it's probably hard for you to even pick one Disco Biscuits show
I've
as your
seen them
favorite.
many, many times over 20 years.
So, are there any shows that you can bring up that you would be remiss if you didn't bring up on this pod?
Um, I can tell you like 2003 was a great year for me. That was the first year I saw The Dead with Joan Osborne at Merriweather. It was
Wow.
June 18th, 2003, and that was very, very cool. That was the first time I ever saw like Bobby and Phil play together. And that was
Wow.
very powerful for me. I cried the whole time. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I might have ruined that show for some of my friends just because I was like weeping the whole time. I was like, I can't believe it. How old was I then? Like maybe like 19 or something. And I saw Fish a month later for the first time. My first Fish show
Wow.
was July 31st, 2003. It was at Tweeter Center at Camden,
Yeah.
and it was great. It was a very good show. It's probably my favorite Fish show. It was the first one I ever saw. And I think
Man,
that's common, I think.
it really is. Like there's especially with Fish, there's a lot of people who bring up their first show and have been like, and I'm really chasing that experience, especially people who saw them in that era, like
Mhm.
especially the pre 2003 era. Yeah, like people are chasing that experience. Was there stuff from that day that like is kind of burned in your memory
Yeah. I mean, the nitrous in the parking lot, like
yeah.
the mushroom brownie. It's just like I was with a really good crew of people that I'm still close with today. Um, and I have pictures from that night too, like from a disposable camera. So it was very fun. They played Frankenstein, which was so good. And
Yeah.
during Week of Pog, they did like Inagata de Vita teases, which was also very cool. So it was a very good first show. I got a lot of heavy hitters in that first show.
When you went into the Dead and Fish shows, were you someone who knew the music and was like, I mean, I'm sure for the Dead, if you're crying the whole time, you kind of had
Yeah,
an
yeah, no,
idea of the
yeah,
music.
yeah. The Dead, I knew. I mean, the Dead is like been with me for a very long time. They're like the Dead is like the most meaningful music to me. They're like
Mm,
my favorite.
yeah.
Um, I remember that like when I first became aware of them, like when I was in like third grade, just like from summer camp, like my camp counselors would listen to them, and I had relatives that listened to them, and was familiar with like some of the iconography, like even as like a 9-year-old, I had like a Grateful Dead canvas belt, even if I didn't really like know what it meant necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I feel like I always had a very eclectic musical taste, but I feel like it was a big transition from like rock. I was into like rock and roll into like more being completely enveloped by the music of the Grateful Dead. And I feel like you could go from like classic, like rock, like punk to rock to classic rock to
Yeah.
Grateful Dead. Like transitioning from like classic rock to Grateful Dead is very organic of a thing. It's very, very, very big into the Beatles, and that the Dead played a bunch of Beatles songs too. Um, what was the question? What am I talking
Well,
about?
just going into those shows, knowing the music, and
Oh, right, 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 right. Of
it's the
course.
same. It was a similar thing for me. Like I loved my parents' music that they would show me in the car when we listened to the White Album on the way to school and stuff like that. And then the music that I found for myself was punk music, and like,
Mhm.
it was funny and it was like loud and like my parents didn't like it, and it was
Rebellious,
and
like
really rebellious.
it was
Yeah.
cool because like it was like they were swearing and stuff, and it was like anti-authoritarian.
Yeah, and that's what made me like rap music too right away. I was like really into hip hop and like all that kind of stuff, and that was the music I found for myself. And then like started getting really into music, playing a little bit of music, and got back into classic rock. And then, like you said, from there, if you're someone who's like liked improvised music or you liked freestyle hip hop, and then now you're getting into classic rock and you like the Allman Brothers and shit like that, like it's very easy to make that next step over to the Dead. Like it's the next
My
logical.
my first 3 cassette tapes that I remember having, and they were all like my mother's, was Beatles Revolver, Beatles Rubber Soul, and this Dolly Parton tape that was called Trio. It was Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris just like singing a bunch of like folk songs, all in like these amazing 3-part harmonies. And
Yeah.
I just like remember like sitting on my bedroom floor as like a 7-year-old, like rewinding it and being like, why does it sound like that? Oh, it's because it's more than one voice singing it. And like trying to like dissect harmonies at a very young age. Like, why is when one person sings this and one person sings a different part, like, why does it sound
Mhm.
good together?
Yeah. Yeah, and you like it quickly becomes like a language that like you're learning. Like that you're learning the different types of like ways that people speak music and stuff, and like, you know, all of a sudden your dad's music doesn't sound, or your parents' music doesn't sound like the language that you like anymore. All of a sudden this like fast punk, rebellious, fuck you language sounds a little bit better. Or like, yeah, all of a sudden you start getting to Broadway stuff and like, wow, it's this whole new language that's
Yeah.
a little
I
more.
remember the first time I ever heard No FX, the first song I heard was on some like punk compilation. And it's the song "It's My Job to Keep Punk Rock Elite." I don't know if you know that song, but it's just like as soon as it starts, it's going a million miles an hour. It's like, wow, I've never heard anything this energetic before. This is like hyping me the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah, it just like it like blows you away at a
Yeah.
young age. And then especially if you like then show it to someone like in your family, you're like, "Isn't this awesome?" And they're like, "Punk music sucks." And then you're just like, "Oh!"
You don't get it. You'll never understand me, mom.
Door slam.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Um any other shows from like that era or more recent times that kind of stick
From
out as like
that era, I don't. Well, yeah, my first Disco Biscuit show was also in 2000. It was a month after that. So like it was like
wow.
The Dead in June, Fish in July, and the Disco Biscuits in August. And it was August 9th, 2003, in Stanhope, New Jersey, at the Waterloo Festival. And it was Medeski, Martin and Woods, String Cheese Incident, Disco Biscuits, Flaming Lips. There may have been more people there.
Cool.
And I had heard the Biscuits before, and I had friends that liked them. But seeing them live, I was just another kind of like, I've never heard anything like this before.
Yeah.
And I sat on a cop car and smoked a bowl and sat on a cop car. This is and I liked the act of doing that. Like it felt like defiant.
Oh yeah.
Not a smart thing to do. I wouldn't recommend doing that. And like we had a bunch of mushroom chocolates too. And I remember watching the Disco Biscuits. They played that classical song, the Saber Dance. You know that it's like,
Yeah.
which I know from Pee Wee Herman. You know, to bring it back to Pee Wee Herman, like, like vision like seals spinning like plates on their noses and stuff. Um, and I was enthralled by them. I don't even know if it was that great of a show. I've listened to it a few times since, but like, and obviously, like, I was on mushrooms as well, but like I like felt like my blood was champagne. I was like, it was a good feeling, and I liked it, and I wanted more of it. And I think when you hear something that you've never heard before, which happens increasingly less and less in life, it makes a big impression. And one of the things I love about them is that they have their own very distinct sound. And if
Mhm.
you can kind of have your pioneer your own sound and leave like an indelible mark on a scene, like that's what I like. And like the Dead, like no one sounded like the Dead. Like Fish, no one sounded like Fish. The Disco Biscuits, no, they started as a Fish cover band, but then they found their distinct own sound. And now like there's so many other jam bands, and we're like, this jam band's good, but they kind of sound like Fish, or like this, they have this like Disco Biscuity section. Like we're comparing other bands to them
Yeah.
because they have their own sound, and that's very special to me.
Yeah, it's super special, and it's really, really hard to, like you said, like, be inspired and then push through and find your own, uh, way within it. I mean, you could not make an argument that the Disco Biscuits sound like a Fish band. Like, they
No,
don't sound like Fish
no,
in this.
they have fishier songs, like some early songs, but,
Yeah.
like, when they play them now, like, they sound like Disco Biscuit songs.
Right. And I think that yeah, I mean it is unfair to these younger bands because these bands that we have already and we have so much music from,
Mhm,
have like so heavily influenced like what's going on in our scene. And so it's very easy to make the jump that they sound like another band, but it's also like there's a lot of truth in it.
mhm.
It's really hard to make a new sound.
It's really hard, and, like,
Yeah,
a lot of people I think a lot of people have a problem with Goose specifically, because Goose, a lot of the time, sounds like Fish. I think Goose has better voices than, Fish ever had. I think Goose has better voices than a lot of the other bands that are out there today. I've seen them, and, there were parts of the show I'm like, "This does kinda sound like Fish," but, they're also evolving, and they're finding their sound. And
totally.
that's what you have to do. Like my favorite bands are all bands that like know, like when you turn it on, like you know who it is right away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like it's then for Goose fans like a lot to defend and like you have to be
Mhm.
like, "Oh no, like it doesn't like it's okay if it's
Yeah,
inspired by that thing." Like these
yeah. I
guys
mean, you
are in
start
their
somewhere.
early
Like
30s.
yeah, like you take your inspiration and your influences and you run with those, and that's what the Disco Biscuits did with Fish. That's what Fish did with the Dead and Frank Zappa.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that like, there's a lot of like people who won't understand like a Frank Zappa or the Grateful Dead because it doesn't sound like what they like.
Hmm.
Um and it just it wasn't ever meant to.
Hmm.
Like they're risking something and yeah, to a lot of people it's going to turn a lot of people off. Like that's what you do when you take a risk is like there are just people who are not going to get it. And like that is still true of the Disco Biscuits
Hmm. Oh God,
specifically,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
I
they take chances, and that's another thing I respect about them. Like I can't say this is 100% the case because I'm not inside their heads, but to me, they have the ability to be comfortable being uncomfortable and be like, let's just see where this goes. It might fly off the rails, but like, we got to try it. And I love
yeah. That I mean, that is something that's still very fishy about them, is
it.
they
Hmm.
do things that are like, "Wow, this is they love this."
Hmm.
Like and or like even with their new work, like there was it's something that they came together on through COVID and that they saw through. Like I just, there is something to be like it's things are just better. It's you said it before when you were talking about your own work. Things are just better when they're done for yourself off the bat. And like that when you release it, it's for everybody else. And then it's now like for Disco Biscuits fans to decide like, what is cool to them and what they enjoy and everything.
Right.
But like
And it's controversial. Like the new stuff is controversial. Like there's certainly like outspoken fans that don't care for it. There's a lot that very much do.
like I really can't think of an artist that has come out like every single thing they've ever put out is accepted by their fan base.
Prince,
Like
maybe.
Prince. And, like, he didn't put all of his stuff out. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that's not put out, like, you know, it's like, that's growth, and there are fan bases who like to watch the growth and are there for it, and
Mhm.
that's true of the Dead fans, Fish fans, and Biscuits fans. What do you feel like is different going to a Biscuit I mean, there's a billion things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What do you think is like like one of the bigger differences of, like, seeing the Disco Biscuits now live than when you saw that first show back in the day?
Well, I am much more familiar with all of the nuances that go on. When I was seeing them for the first time, I was just like, this is like circus music.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but I know that it's like speaking to me. Um, Now, like I've seen them like 400 times, over 20 years. Um,
Yeah, all
Now like
last year.
I'm like, no, I'm so familiar with the catalog and I like if you see a show with me, like I will tell you what's happening. Like I can, they played a tease of a song that they played last night for a minute. They're doing a fake out here. They're calling back to a specific one time that they played a song. I don't know, just you what's really fun is like what's coming just because you're the more you do anything, the more you practice anything, the better you get at it. I'm
Yeah.
just good at listening to them. And a lot of the time I know what's gonna happen, but a lot of the time I'm wrong. And
Yeah.
that's even more exciting. Like I
Yeah.
can see a band 400 times and think I know what's going on and still be mistaken. That's a treat. That's like what keeps you coming back. And I love their energy. They're more energetic than any band I've ever seen, except maybe like System of a Down. But even System of a Down isn't like playing like for 3 hours at a time.
Right.
I listened to the Touchdowns All Day, which is Barbara's podcast yesterday, where a statistic was given, and I wrote it down because I thought it was so amazing. Um, they played 34 shows on the last tour, 65 sets, and they only stopped playing 7 times.
Man, that's
So,
that's
so at
crazy.
58 of the shows that they played, they didn't stop playing the whole time.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's fun. And when that happens, you get segue after segue after segue, and it controls. You have complete control over the pace and mood of your show, especially like when you play a song, like when you start it, you crescendo to a peak and then you decrescendo to the end. But if you like don't play the end of your song and you just go into another song, like you keep the energy going. And that's also something that's very special about them.
It's a joke that I do with Sean and then Connor, who runs the Long Strange Niche, is like,
Mhm.
well, one of us will see a Biscuits show, and then afterwards they'll be like, "Did they peak tonight?"
Uh-huh.
Like, they peaked, didn't they? I missed it, didn't they? Yeah, and like yeah, that's what I like to see in a show of any type of show, and it's very difficult when you wipe the energy in a way of
Mhm.
like and when you come to an end of a song, you'd think it's like, oh yeah, it's got to be so hard to play through the night, but yeah, there is a level of control that you get to keep a tempo going, and you don't
Mhm.
lose it, and you don't have
Right.
to find it.
Some people, have a criticism with certain bands. We don't have to name them.
Yeah.
Um, where they're not like reading the room or not even like curating a set list in advance. And so you've got this like awesome jam, it stops, and then a slow song is played. And then people go to the bathroom or whatever. And that's fine. Like it depends what kind of music you're into. But if you really want to keep the energy in that room going, then you have the ability as a band to curate your show so that that happens. And they take their set list writing extremely seriously, and they put a lot of hard work into it to foster that kind of environment.
It is like it's a train that's running away when you see those guys
Yeah.
right off the bat. And there's not like whatever, like you said, we don't have to name bands, but there's no there's no ripcord into shade.
Right. Exactly. Um, Vogel
Same thing.
Bordello also is very, very energetic band.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Do you with that,
Hmm.
we've come to your best show ever. Do you have a best show that you're gonna say is your best show today at least?
What I'm going to say is that my best show was, and I think it's my best show. It was 21 years ago. No, 11 years ago. 11 years ago. It was December 3rd, according to what I've written down here, December 3rd, 2013. Elton John at Madison Square Garden.
Whoa,
Yeah.
man.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah, yeah, of
I
course.
don't remember why I was in New York. I don't think I had planned on being there, but just found myself there and ran into a friend, and we just decided, and we were both Elton John fans, and we knew we were both big Elton John fans. And she was like, "Do you want to try and go to MSG?" And I was like, "Yes, I want nothing more than to do that." We didn't have tickets, So I like went to the ATM and like took out a bunch of money to try and like buy a ticket when I got there. As soon as we walk up the stairs, there was this couple standing there and they kind of like caught our eye. And I was like, do I know them? Like, I'm just gonna wave in case I do. I didn't know them. But they were like, hey, do you guys have tickets tonight? And we are like, no, we don't. And they're like, you do now. And they just kind of miracled us. And they were like
Oh,
pretty decent seats.
oh
So
my
we were like,
God.
okay, this is great news. So meanwhile, we have like a lot of cash now that we don't need to spend on tickets. So we're like, let's hit the bar. And
Yeah,
I
right.
mentioned earlier I didn't have the best relationship with alcohol at the time. So we
Sure.
like went kind of ham. And like as soon as we went to the bar, we each got like a beer, a drink, and a shot. And then we went to our seats and we sat with the people who gave us the tickets and were, shooting the shit with them. Went back to the bar and decided that we would try and sneak up closer. And so every time we got up to go back to the bar, we would kind of sneak closer and closer until we got like incredibly close. But
Yeah.
by this point, we were very, very wasted and behaving in a way that was not really in accordance with acceptable MSG Elton John goer conduct, I guess I'll say. And we were like very, very obviously like doing like dancing in the aisles, and like everyone around us was sitting and we're frankly appalled at our behavior. And and during the encore, which was Saturday Night's All Right for, and I'm screaming the whole time, like I'm screaming the lyrics to every song. We both are, and I'm sure everyone around us hated us. And security comes during Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting and escorts us physically out and throws us out of the building. And meanwhile, I'm like arguing. I'm like trying to like think of whatever I can say to like convince them to let us stay. And I'm like, hey, like we're brother and sister. It's our dad's birthday. Like he's gonna be so mad if we get kicked out. Like you gotta let us stay. And the security guards are like, I feel you, kid, but like everyone's on camera here. Like you're getting kicked the fuck out.
Yeah.
And so we got kicked the fuck out. But it was during Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, which was also very funny to me. And I'm very glad they didn't have like the facial recognition software that they have now. Otherwise, for the past 11 years, I would not have been able to go back to MSG or the Sphere for that matter.
Oh my God.
It was just like such a wonderfully cathartic experience. And I was behaving like a complete asshole, but having the best time of my life with a friend who like also like it just like meant a lot to both of us. And it was someone that I like don't see that often because she lives on the other side of the country. Anyway, fast forward 10 years, last summer for Dead & Co, I was set up in the Philly lot. I love vending in Philly, by the way. I love Philadelphia. Best people, best crowd. Like I always crush it there and just have the best time. And I saw her again because she was there. She was like friendly. She was like doing something for OTL, like friendly with him. So we got like sweet seats through him. And after the show, which was great, we got in the car, turned on the car, and Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting was on the radio. And we just like looked at each other and lost our shit.
That is, I mean, especially of all the songs, I think that there's a lot of Elton John songs that are funny to get kicked out to. Like, I think Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters would be very funny to get kicked out to. But that is the getting kicked out of a bar song of all of his songs.
Yeah.
If there's one song,
absolutely.
Like that's the getting thrown out guy song for sure. And like, you know what? You might have been some people's bad night. Like you might have horrified some people around you, but like you deserve to do that every once in a while. I'm sorry. Like we shouldn't. You know me.
Are you
I don't want
me right now. You're enabling my bad.
Yeah, I am. You know what? Yes.
Not about you.
I'm saying yes to it. I like it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad you're in a place that's healthy with alcohol these days. I am so happy that you are a respectful concert goer, a pro at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone would be lucky to be next to you at a show.
I was a child then. This was over a decade ago.
I'm a different guy.
I painted a bad picture of that guy, but I'm a different man now.
It's a different guy. And listen, you have a story now that
Mhm,
you can tell and impart on a podcast to other
mhm.
people and let them know, hey, you might have had a great time, but there's healthier ways to do this. But listen, there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this episode that are going to be like, no, fuck that. You should be able to dance in the aisle and not sit, sit so close
I
and
mean,
sit
like,
down.
the fact that it was during the encore, like, it must have been pretty miserable. A lot of people must have complained because the show was almost over, and they
Yeah.
still were like, "Get them out of here."
What are you supposed to do when you're sitting close, though? I'm not, listen, again, we're happy you're healthy, but
Mhm.
like, sit down during one during that song or dance
Yeah,
in the aisle.
I was dancing my heart out and
Well,
singing at the top of my lungs.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for that moment, and I'm proud of you for who you are right now, the guy
Thank
I'm talking to right now.
thank you.
Um, this has been so lovely having you on. Do you have anything coming up that you're super excited about? I know that you've got more Sphere this weekend, but anything else like this summer that you're
I mean, I
dying
have
to
so
see?
so many spheres coming up this weekend. I mean, like, talking about, like, honorable mentions, like, if the Drums in Space from the Sphere is
Man,
incredible. Like,
yeah.
that is worth the price of admission alone. It's so unbelievably cool that situation was made for the Sphere.
Yeah, oh man, it just felt like the coolest. It just felt like Mickey has been waiting for that place his whole life, and I'm
I'm
sure he's had incredible weekends in his life, but that's got to be one of the top weekends ever of his life.
I'm very,
It,
very happy for him,
yeah,
and I was happy
yeah,
for myself that I got to see it.
yeah, yeah. I'm proud of me too.
Um, I think that I have 2 other, honorable mentions. I mean, I have a couple honorable mentions, actually, if we have
Oh,
time.
we've got so much time.
Oh, great. Um, there's, a Disco Biscuit show in 2006. It was at the Fox Theater. Let's see, I wrote down the
Mm,
date here. It was, 11/19/06, and it was at the
mm.
Fox, and it was the sold-out show, and I didn't have a ticket for it. I flew from Maryland to Colorado not having a ticket. Um, I just went around the back of the building and just opened the door and walked in and see if anyone said anything, and no one said anything. So,
Amazing.
they opened with Chemical Warfare Brigade that night, and, which I love, so I ran to go see it, and then I wanted a drink, so I went to the bar, saw that you needed a wristband, so I went to the front where they were letting people in, and apparently you got a wristband when you paid and gave a ticket. So I was thrown out, and, one of my friends who was up front at the time went out to, like, kind of help me and convinced the bouncer that we had walked in together. He goes, "Look at his ID." I held up the ID. It says he's from DC. Like, why would he be here without a ticket? It doesn't make any sense. Like, you scanned both of our tickets. He just didn't get a wristband. He walked away. I didn't do any. I was just like on the verge of tears, and my buddy is just like so cool. My friend Liav, thank you, Liav, and
Nice.
he got me into that show. And there's this one, it was my favorite show for a very long time. I don't know if that's still, I haven't listened to it in a long time, and like they are such a different band than they were in 2006. But there's this one segment that was just like a little under an hour. During the first set, it was like a Memphis Cyclone, Inverted Waves, Svengali ending. It was like, 57-ish minutes. And
Man.
that Cyclone, um, if you're familiar, the song Cyclone is a very high energy song. This was also like a very exciting point in the band for the new drummer Alan, who hadn't been the drummer that long at that time, and
Mm.
he crushed Cyclone. That was one of the songs he got right away. And there's this little like embellishment that Barber would play like at the end of the Cyclone riff that he had never done before, and I'd never heard him done since. And I just like, I always hear that in my head. Like, even, they played it for one show, however many years, in 2006. And Cyclone goes like da 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 da, and the part that he played at the end of that was that was no good. Edit that out. Edit that out. It goes. That's what it was, and he just like kept doing that every time for whatever reason I couldn't say. And I've listened to it a lot of times. I haven't listened to it in probably more than 10 years, but just the whole experience of that show, like getting kicked out and getting to get back let in, and the roller coaster of emotions. And like they also played the song Carmina Burana, or excuse me, the song O Fortuna from the like cantata Carmina Burana by Karl Orff. It's like da 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 da
Yeah.
da 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 da. They played that night, which they haven't played in a long time either, and it was just a great show. I love that
With
show.
you being close to the band, like that's the exact type of stuff that like everyone would like to talk to their favorite musician about. It's like these little embellishments at the one show that they now hear forever, or why don't you play this song like this anymore, or that kind of stuff. Like with you being close to the band, super close to the band, have you talked to Barbara about that embellishment and been
I've
like, what
never brought
happened?
that up ever. I've never even thought to bring it up because I like haven't listened to that show in a really long time. And the only reason I thought of it because I was like thinking about like what are shows that were like meaningful to me over the years. And I
Yeah.
thought about that one. And then like when I was looking at the set list, I was like, oh yeah, like I love that part. So now that I have thought about it again, like I'll bring it up to him. Or maybe if he watches this episode, I won't even have to.
He
Um,
watches every episode. He really
Dude loves podcasts.
we had so much fun chatting. Like
Yeah.
it was so awesome to have him on the podcast.
He's a dude.
Yeah, and it was fun getting to hang with both of you guys. For those listening, Alex was very cool and got me backstage at the Disco Biscuits show that we saw in LA together. And that was cool. It was cool getting to hang with you and the band and like see your relationship to those guys because you are very close with them.
I love those guys. I've been a fan, I've been an employee, and I've been a friend.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's super cool how available they've allowed themselves to be to fans or people that they like want to work with or be around. That's like what's super cool about the scene in general, but I feel like they are like shining examples of that, like the one of the best examples of that
Mark Brownstein is the most accessible rock star ever.
ever.
If you like talk to him on Twitter, he'll respond, and
Yeah.
he cares too.
Yeah, he's just like so complimentary, and he's also like anything I can do type of a guy, when it's very understandable for him to not be. Like it'd be very understandable if he's like, "Oh, sorry man, I don't know, didn't see it," you know.
Well,
He's
I
like
think
that.
most musicians like are kind of aloof, but like
Yeah.
just like the sense of community that they create is unprecedented. Like if you go backstage at a show, it's a party. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many people there for better or for worse. There is a community, and they it's they're so accessible. Like you said it, like they're like so unbelievably accessible as people.
Yeah, and it's a very cool way to be because
It is.
then I mean, they're not taking themselves so seriously that like we can't talk to them. Um which is cool. Do you say do you have any other honorable mentions before you
Anything. Are there
never
any
get
other
to
shows
talk?
I've been kicked out of? That's like seems to be the theme. I was kicked out of a Hives show at 9:30 Club one time, but I don't remember it that well. There was another I don't know, the Biscuits Hunter Mountain, like that Camp Bisco. I think it was Camp Bisco 5. It was like August of '06. That whole weekend is incredible. Um, I saw System of a Down at what is now Fiddler's Green. It used to be called the Comfort or
Mm,
Dental Arena 13 years ago in May of 2011. And me and my buddy Dan made our way down to the rail, and I just got the shit beaten out of me. I was like, bloody and bruised, but rode the rail at a System of a Down show, and it was a very memorable experience.
man. Yeah, that's a band I haven't seen live, but yeah, I can't imagine that I'd do well in the front of that show.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't recommend it. Like if I was I mean, you're a big person, like you might be okay. Like if I was a smaller person, oh my God, I would have been taken out on a stretcher.
At least we're tall. We can sway in the breeze. We can take a punch or two.
Billy and the Kids at Red Rocks 2
Mm,
years ago was one of my favorite shows ever. The second day, like the late great James Casey singing Dear
mm.
Prudence, like there wasn't a dry eye in the house. My God, that was really amazing.
Yeah, those are exceptional shows, and those are like such a treat. like to get to see those
Yeah.
configurations of musicians.
Yeah, they reminded me more of Jerry Band than they did of like a Dead cover band. You know, even though Kreutzmann was there, it was going to church. It really was. It was just like, and Billy Strings was there, having the
Yeah.
sax. I guess maybe having the sax there is what made me think it was remind me more of Jerry Band. But like some of my favorite Grateful Dead shows have Branford Marsalis playing sax. So
I mean,
um,
you're a ska guy. You like
I
the horn
guess I
section.
just like
Yeah.
horn. That's what it is.
That's what you are at heart. You're a ska guy. You want it. You want it there. Yeah.
I mean, I've also shot many shows working for Nug, so I've gotten to work with a lot of musicians that I love. Like, I've gotten to work with Phil, I've gotten to work with Bobby, I've gotten to work with Les Claypool. I was on stage for like the Claypool Lennon Delirium show at Sweetwater Fest a few years ago. That's a cool band. That is a very cool band.
He is such a, I mean, and Les Claypool is such a cool fucking guy to be around. To see live is like, and to see live close, like to
Yeah,
watch him operate close is like, yeah, he's like an anomaly musician in our scene. You know, he's just like extra special dude to see up close.
I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor some time ago that he tried out for Metallica as Metallica's bass player, and they were just kind of like, "You're too good to be in this band. Maybe this isn't the right fit." I don't know
I
if
have
that's true.
I have always heard the same story that they'd
Yeah,
be like, we would have to be like Metallica featuring Les Claypool if we
right.
if you were in the band.
Yeah.
So yeah, he'll just do like little stuff. Like there was I saw him live a couple years ago and we were like really close. It was at the Chicago Theater. It was a Primus show where he did Rush.
Oh
Um,
yes, that was so
yeah.
good.
Oh, and it was like so fucking good. And there's just little things where he had just set up like some bass groove for something that was the beginning of a song. It was just like boom, 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 boom. And he like had to check something with his like mic pack in the back of his, or like something that was like hooked to the back of his belt. And he like just released the finger that he was holding the note with and like was messing with it with his left hand and then like holding the note with this finger and plucking it with his ring finger just for like a couple notes of it and then went back to like how you're supposed to hold your bass and I was like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah,
Like he's just like yeah, he like it. Yeah, I don't know, just watching him live is insane.
I've seen Sam Bush do that, like where he's like playing the mandolin and like, hang on a sec.
Sorry, do you want
No,
us
that's okay.
Okay, sorry.
Where he's basically like tuning or like fixing a strap and like just like is playing so fast and never misses a beat.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know, there's people who just have that like it's an extension of them, like their instrument is an extension of them type person, and that's Les Claypool's that dude. Yeah, I like getting to be close to some of these people is like a really it's never not cool to be close to some of these people when they're making music on
Are you a
stage.
Rush fan?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
big
so
time.
like that album Farewell to Kings is incredible, and just to
Yeah.
hear Les Claypool talk about that afterwards, like you can tell how much of a Rush fan he is.
Yeah,
You're like,
he was like apologetic of like he's like, I'm sorry this wasn't what it was supposed to be. It was like that was amazing. It was amazing presentation of Rush, and he is so reverent to like what those
right.
guys did.
Like I imagined like a young Les Claypool like being in the audience at a Rush show and like looking up at him and being like, "That's what I want to do," and then he did it, and he did it his own way too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
it
have their
really
own
wasn't.
sound.
It was very much Primus doing Rush, which is like, yeah, it was just so cool to see. And you know, with Neil Peart dying recently, like, yeah, that it made it extra special because yeah, like I mean, we saw Rush every single time they came around with our folks, and so 6 shows maybe something like that. And yeah, it's like that's music that is also like there's such a community around that music. It is so like if it's for you, it's so for you. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier with what you make. And like their fans react so viscerally to it. And so like yeah, watching Primus play it and like yeah, it was like such a Rush crowd. It was like a bunch of 55, 60-year-old dudes playing air guitar and air drums, like
Yeah,
how a normal Rush show is. Yeah,
yeah.
you know. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, any final. I mean, this is it. You'll never come back on.
Um, I saw Rod Stewart
Oh,
in April of 2016, and while he walked around the audience while he was playing Maggie May, and he was walking towards me, and I was like, oh my god, he's walking right towards me. And then he kind of like reaches down and does like this kind of like Michael Jackson, he like hold onto his crotch type of a thing, and I was like, okay. And then he walked over and shook my hand like right after he had just touched his penis.
yeah.
By transit, so like not only have I shaken hands with Rod Stewart, it was right after by transitive property I've touched his penis.
I've shaken his dick, to be
Oh,
honest.
oh, so then that's way more impressive.
That's what you've done. No, I didn't do that. You did that.
Oh,
You
I
shook
did
his
that.
dick.
Oh, I thought you're saying you did. I was
You
like, wait, you
essentially
gotta
shook his
one
dick.
up me.
Did he do the thing where he like kicks soccer balls into the crowd at that
Yeah,
show? Where he's
yeah.
like signed soccer balls? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I always
Have you
thought that was
seen
like a
that?
funny thing. No, there's a family friend of ours that had like a signed Rod Stewart soccer ball in their basement. They're like, we caught it at a show. He does it all the time. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what a cool thing. Just kick
yeah,
some merch out to people.
yeah. That is a good way to get merch out. I was confused by that, but I was just like, no one else seemed confused. So I was like, I just went with it. I wish I got one, but I shook his hand, so that's pretty darn cool. It's on video. I have it on video, shaking his hand too.
Do you have the moment where he's got his hand on his junk right
Yeah,
before too?
so I can
Man,
prove all of it.
please do. Please post that.
I'm sure I have, but that was 2016, so that was like 8 years ago now.
Well, like we've learned, there's no rules to the new Springfield Boogie page. So you could post, a Dolly Parton Jurassic Park mashup, or you could post a video of you touching Rod Stewart's dick. Either way, it's gonna work. People are gonna love it.
You're right. There's a way
Yeah.
to. I don't think there are bad ideas. I think it's all about execution.
Yep. And how you and how you do it well.
Hmm.
Post the picture of you touching Rod Stewart's junk
I will.
with grace.
Haters will say it's photoshopped.
Exactly. We didn't have that in 2016.
No, we
Didn't
did.
exist.
No, we did. We had it. I wasn't as good at using it, I guess, at that time. Oh, here's my last one, probably.
Okay.
I got to give a shout out to my wife, Lizzie Lane. She, for my birthday this past year, she asked if she asked Aaron Magner from the Disco Biscuits, if they would play Jolene by Dolly Parton, and they ended up sampling it as during Spaga, which I guess opened the show in Albany, home of the steamed ham. And during the show, like they were playing, I guess it was Morph. They were playing Morph Dusseldorf, and all of a sudden, like they were sampling Jolene over Morph, and I was like, what is happening right now? And I looked at her, and she's like, yeah, it was me. And I just,
yeah, dude.
that's it. That's a good wife. So that was really, really special. So thank you, Lizzie, for
Wow.
watching.
Disco Biscuits fans have to go find that moment.
Yeah, it's like it's easy to find. It's the first song of the Albany show.
Incredible.
Honestly, it was good too.
It's well deserved.
Yeah.
You've given so much to that band. They can give you Jolene back.
I'm happy now. I don't need anything else.
Thank you again. I thanked you earlier, but this was really, really great. It's been great getting to know you a little bit more, and I'm really excited to be at a show with you. We've done pre-show hellos, we've done post-show hangs, and I can't wait to see a show with you one of these days.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll hang out anytime.
It doesn't have to be at a show.
Do you have any plans? Are you attending anything in the near future?
I am. I'm gonna go to Mondegreen.
Oh, nice.
I'm probably gonna go to Alpine Valley for Fish. And I think I'm hitting Bonnaroo for the first time this summer. Yeah. I think I might be making some silly videos at Bonnaroo, and I have had a bunch of near misses of going to Bonnaroo, so I'm looking forward to it. It kind of feels like going to Disneyland when you're older or something. Like I didn't do it in my early 20s, and so but I'm excited for that and excited for the sets I'll see at that.
So are you making funny videos like with Bonnaroo?
With Festesia.
Okay.
Festesia is like there's sort of like festival, and I'm gonna go and do some like man on the street interview type stuff, and then also try to like do some character bits. And
I had that exact experience actually. Eight 8 years ago, I went to Bonnaroo and I was friends with people who worked for Superfly, who was putting it on, and they were doing this bit. It's when Snapchat was very, very kind of like new and big, and they were doing this bit where they were passing the Bonnaroo phone from like artist to artist, and they were doing Snapchats for however long they wanted to, and I got to be one of the people that did that, and I was doing this character that like wanted to like talk about tents with people, and so I was wearing like a scarf, and I had like a sparkly microphone, and I was like talking about I was like, welcome to Tent Talk, we're going to talk about your tent. And so like I had the phone for a few for like not quite a whole day, but for quite a while. So that was really, really fun. I don't have any of those videos. I have no idea what happened to any of them. I'm sure Bonnaroo has them. Yeah, Snapchat has them.
They're gone.
Yeah,
they were gone after a couple.
Anyone who's ever sent a Snapchat, it's somewhere.
They've got them. Well, yeah, maybe I'll just steal that idea completely from.
Do it. You can have it.
That'll be yeah. Tent Talk it is.
I reprised that character recently on a new Springfield Boogie post where I was a podcast host that was interviewing myself.
I love that video.
Thank you. It was that guy. The guy who talks like this. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Tent Talk guy.
Yeah. I got that voice from the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland.
That's the voice. It's certainly inspired.
Yeah.
It was a certainly inspired voice. Yeah, I did this guy at Cascade Festival who's like endlessly positive, but he's like getting more and more injured throughout the weekend.
That's good.
He's like wearing like a neck brace, and he's like, "No, I'm having a great time. Like, if anyone has ibuprofen, I'd take some, but I'm like good mostly. Like, I'm like,
I'm just very
concerned." Everyone else is like concerned for him. They're like, "It's okay if you're like needing to stay in." It's like, what? No, you guys.
Go.
Let's do this. Ow. Ow.
I like that. I think that has legs.
All right, folks, that was my conversation with Alex. New Springfield Boogie, man, he's a fantastic guy, and he's a genuine individual. I really appreciate the way that he is just himself at all times. And I can't stop myself from just wanting to listen to Alex. I try to pride myself as a pretty good listener, but when someone like Alex is talking, you are gripped. You don't even have to think about it, Fantastic guy. If you see him on lot at all, at least walk by the booth and say hi. Give him a high five, and maybe even buy a shirt or something from him, because his stuff is fantastic. Follow the New Springfield Boogie. Follow Best Show Ever on Instagram as well. We got more episodes coming out next week. We got a bonus episode out right now on the Patreon. If you're interested in that, you can join the Patreon in the link tree in the bio of my Instagram and or Twitter. And folks, until next time, have a great show.